Good morning, friends. So this video is a little bit different from what I normally do on my channel. So if you're into project videos, this is not a project video. This is a chat. And I don't normally do chats. I am driving, so there may be pauses as I pay attention to the road, because that is more important than my YouTube videos. So I'm headed to Northeast Florida, or Northwest Florida. Oh hell, let's just call it North Florida, because it's really not East or West, it's North Central Florida, what I affectionately refer to as the armpit of Florida. So I want to talk about my latest project. And it's I have had a really long obsession with owning a motor coach. And so, yeah, I'm going to look at another bus. Sometimes I feel like I don't have any power over buses, and yeah, whatever. I'm not going to throw out the 12-step language there, but really, it's if it's not an addiction, it's definitely an illness. And so, I've owned, this would be number 6 if I buy this one. And if I don't buy this one, I've got another one to look at. So I want to talk a little bit about the why and the what, because I think it's going to inform some videos that I make in the near future. My first bus was a school bus that I bought for $300 at an auction in, 98, 97 maybe. No, probably 98 or 99. 97, yeah. Actually, it probably would have been a little earlier than that. So, at any rate, I paid $300 for it in a school district auction. It was an activity bus, which meant it was already old. And I stripped out the, most of the remaining seats. And I think I left one seat on the side. And from there, I put plywood and carpet in, and I was just overwhelmed with the house systems and how to put them in. And, at the time I was, 27 or 28. I wasn't that old. So I just kind of, that was where that one ended. I added a deck to it. I didn't want it to look like a school bus. It was kind of a lemon chiffon yellow. So I painted black spots over it because it was too expensive to have vinyl cut for it, and owning a vinyl cutter was out of the question in the late 90s for me as an individual. Oh, but fate had other plans for me. So I sold it to my landlord when I bought my first house, and then I learned all about house systems at the School of Hard Knocks. That house was something else. I bought a house that the tenant in it thought I was going to tear it down, so they stripped out a whole bunch of crap, and I raised hell with the seller. And I remember the seller pounding the table, "I'm getting fucked." No, bitch, you're not, because nobody would do that. At any rate, she ended up paying $500 for the shit her tenant stripped out of there. And I ended up scrapping that clawfoot tub that I made him give me back. But that was a whole nother story in and of itself. I had big plans for that tub, like I have big plans for so many other things. So, fast forward, bus number 2 was a GM PD 4106, I think. It wasn't a 4104. It was definitely an inner city coach, like an urban inner city coach, and it had been a Trailways bus that was sold to Wake Forest University, and then it was sold at least one more time. And my partner at the time and I were really super naive on these things. And so we flew out to North Carolina, picked up a rental car. We had bought it on eBay, drove over, checked it out. If I'd been by myself, I might have walked away from that bus, but nope. Once Ryan agreed to do something, we were doing it. So, yeah, I never take a whole lot of encouragement to do crazy shit. So, yeah, we did it. Returned the rental car, and just naively, on a bus we didn't know shit about, hadn't done anything other than start it up and look at it and test drive it, start off cross country from North Carolina to Houston, Texas. got pulled over once because our lights were dim. Yeah, it had a generator charging problem. Oops. I don't remember what the outcome of that was. I just know that I never did anything with it. And anyway, making that story short, decided it was just too expensive to operate, and it had airbag issues, and it had front it needed some front end work done. I mean, as anything that old should do. It was like a 1969 bus, and this was like 2002 or 3. I'd had a Catalina 22 sailboat by this time, and then I bought so anyway, this bus wound up as storage for my t-shirt business. We kept t-shirts in it. We just, it was, the cabinetry required for all the curved surfaces was just a bridge too far, and we couldn't overcome the mechanical issues. Couldn't find anybody in Houston that said, yeah, I can work on this. Everybody was like, oh, hell no, I don't want anything to do with that old piece of shit. There are no parts for it. And I gotta tell you, other than the airbag issue, man, it was a beautiful ride. It absolutely beautiful ride. It was a new look fishbowl, and the windshields were a whole other issue, because those are high on there were and this sums up the whole coach. The whole coach had high unobtainium content, meaning there was just shit you couldn't get on that coach. And the PD series GM coaches used a Detroit diesel. This was a 6V71 in the back. It got about 10 miles to the gallon, weighed roughly 20,000 pounds empty. But they were a monocoque chassis design, meaning that the frame and the skin were part of the structure. And so you really need to be careful modifying them. And for whatever crazy reason, the engine is a module. So the engine and the transmission's a work of art only the Air Force could be proud of, because it takes a sideways engine and turns it not 90 degrees, but another 45 degrees and points it back to a weird rear axle. So yeah, they hadn't made those in forever, and they don't make that anymore. And if you destroy one, you are screwed. So anyway, ended up selling that to somebody in Florida. I bought a Tartan 27 sailboat, owned that for a number of years, really enjoyed it. Sold that, bought a Lance truck camper, put it in my F350, and learned all about weights and balance. It was a Lance 835. It was a good camper, other than, it had 30 gallons of fresh water, which is really adequate for one or two people. It had, 7-gallon black tank, again, very adequate for one or two people. It had like a 12-gallon gray tank. All right, now, 12 gallons sounds like a lot. It's not. It's just really not. What are you going to do with 12 gallons? You're going to wash your hands twice, rinse a pot, and take a 5-minute shower, and that thing is full. So, yeah, that was the death knell for that thing, and no generator. So, I hope you like it hot. And I live in Texas, so it's always hot, unless it's not, and then it's freezing. We have two seasons. We have cold rainy season and hot rainy season in Houston. So, needless to say, I did do some camping with it, but you really needed to be on hookups, and then you weren't really going to do anything with the shower, unless you could dump gray, and pretty much nobody lets you dump gray anymore. So it really hamstrung that camper. Time went along, and I sold that camper. It really didn't cost me very much to own. I built a dolly for it. So I made a platform with 4x4s and 3/4-inch plywood and put some casters on it, and I could set it down, and then I could roll it where I needed it. And honestly, that was a fantastic thing, because it allowed me to very easily put that thing out of the way. That would have been hard to do with the truck, and when it came time to put it back on the truck, I could, back the truck up, move the camper in place, line it up, raise the camper up, because it had electric screw jacks, back the truck up, and set it down. It was just a real easy loading and unloading and storage accessory. If I was doing it again, I'd probably build it out of steel. But, you know, at the time I did wood for whatever crazy reason. And I've been able to weld for a long time, so that's never been an issue. It was probably a cost of time thing. So anyway, I bought an Argosy. Argosy was Airstream's fuel-efficient lightweight series, with an emphasis on light. And weight, as in W-A-I-T. Wait for the stupid fucking engineering decisions that they made. So it was a rear bathroom, and rear bathroom Argosys and rear bathroom Airstreams in general suffer from shit construction. And the whole thing just wasn't really that well done. So this was a painted Airstream with steel caps in the front and the back, and the rest of it was aluminum. And if you wanted to, you know, take the paint off, you could probably polish it up and make it shiny, but that's very high maintenance, and high maintenance is not really something I find attractive in toys. It's just not. So, you know, it had a rotten floor. It had, you know, the tanks were in the back, and the tanks in the back stresses the frame, which causes all sorts of issues. Yeah, what are we gonna do? Fuck it, we'll gut it. Oh, hey, we gotta get this floor out here. It's between the frame and the shell. Okay, well, they bolted the shell to the frame with the floor sandwiched in there. There is no nice way to fix that. Fuck it. I'll just take the shell off. So I did. And I didn't really want to work on the bottom of it to remount the belly skin. So I built a couple of gantry cranes on the cheap, because I didn't have a whole lot of money at the time, and I just flipped the damn thing over and worked on it, and, you know, wire brushed it, primed it, put tanks in between the axles, changed it to torsion axles. I did all sorts of wild shit to that thing. Got it to the rolling tent stage, and again was intimidated by the carpentry. I hadn't quite realized, oh, you make cardboard templates for all this shit. So, you know, another good idea, another brick on the road to hell. I had a lot of fun with that camper, but it's not fun I can really talk about. Never took it camping, but God, I enjoyed that camper. I had a lot of fun with that camper. And that's all I can say on that, because this is not an OnlyFans channel. And that's probably haven't said too much. But on another subject, so I sold that, and then I thought I was cured. No RV, no boat. You know, owning a boat was neat, but you really couldn't sail anywhere. It was cheap. I gotta give you that. I mean, it was a couple $100 a month to have a slip, and you know, the fastest way to get rid of your friends was say, hey, let's clean the boat. They vanish. But you know, Galveston Bay is really not that exciting or alluring of a place. If you enjoy the entirety of your world being your back patio, then yes, Galveston Bay is probably a wonderful destination for you. But I just thought it was boring and small. So, you know, I bought a new house. I paused a whole bunch of shit that I was working on and focused on the house for a year and a half, and got the house to where it's mostly done. It's done as Brian standards. If I ever fully complete it, there's a risk I'll sell it, because that's typically the only time I ever actually finish a house. So anyway, I bought the house and got it done, and midway through the process, I was like, you know, I should buy a school bus. I can convert it, because I have this really big driveway in back of my house, like runs the whole width of the property from the side street to the neighbor's fence. And so I was looking at auctions. I wanted a transit style or a D-nose, or not D-nose, a flat nose. You know, I was looking at Ritchie Brothers auction because it had a bus that I wanted, and I noticed that the lot before it was this really cool looking motorhome, a motor coach. And I didn't think it was going to go for much, and I'm like, oh, I'll bid on it. If I lose, I'll still bid on my bus. You know, and I started looking at this thing because I'd never seen anything like it. It's a Neoplan Spaceliner N1172. Biggest piece of shit to ever roll around in America. Pegasus converted 12 coaches in not so lovely Beaumont, Texas. They bought them from Neoplan with an S&L loan. They brought two axle and 10 three axles, and they were all a fucking overweight nightmare. Mine had been driven around at a prior auction, and the odometer had only clicked up a few hundred miles, so I was like, well, if it ran 500 miles ago, it probably still runs. It's a Detroit diesel. They're pretty indestructible. And that's pretty much accurate. I figured, well, the worst that's going to happen, I'm going to buy it, and it's not going to move, and I'm going to turn around and re-auction it and be done with it. So I flew out to Paris, California. That is not a lovely place. And got kicked out of the auction yard for changing belts and putting batteries in it. But I got it running, and then I broke down in Coachella, and that dashed any fantasies I'd had about Coachella music festivals. If you are a lizard or a snake, Coachella is paradise, and the rest of the time it's just a dusty, nasty place. And the TA there, bless its heart, it had 3 restaurantlets: Taco Bell, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I think a Burger King. I don't know. Whatever it was, I spent Christmas there, and that's not a Christmas I don't want to do that again. I had a lot of fun with the Neoplan. Problem with the Neoplan was every fucking thing on it was an engineering project, because Neoplan had exited the North American market and wanted absolutely nothing to do with these buses, because MAN, another big German manufacturer, had bought them. And the net of it is they didn't want shit to do with the American market if it wasn't a marine engine. And so, yeah, there we were. Every single fucking thing, I had to stalk down the detail and try to figure out where to get it. I became very familiar with DIN, which is German equivalent of ASE or ISO. It's their standards, and almost every fastener and mechanical object on it was the DIN standard, because, yeah, it's a German bus. It was a space frame design, monocoque. And, honestly, it's a really good bus design. But they had taken out whatever piece of shit engine was in it, along with the piece of shit ZF transmission, and they had put in a Detroit diesel with an Allison. Yep, it's a metric bus with an American engine. There was it, and honestly, it wasn't bad. I forget what the original power plant was supposed to be, but it wasn't a Detroit nothing. My understanding is they had sent the buses back to Neoplan USA in Denver, and they had done the re-engine there under German supervision. So, whatever. I really only had a problem with it once, and I found a very honest mobile mechanic. I found an honest mechanic in Mobile, Alabama, when I was there for work, who had to basically custom make something. Great guy. Definitely would recommend him. No, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. He was in Tillman's Corner, which is just south of Mobile. Super nice people in Mobile, even if that state is so just back-asswards. Just really wonderful people that live there. I spent several months working in Mobile, and I really absolutely enjoyed the people, and truly a wonderful community. So anyway, the Neoplan had clearance issues, and after living in it for 3-4 months in 2019, I decided it was time to make some changes and make it a little more functional for me. So I ripped everything out of it and took it to the scale and weighed it, and realized, fuck, this thing didn't have any payload capacity if you were going to respect the axle weights. I couldn't figure out how to weight and balance the build. It's, the raw materials, that even every way that I trimmed it out, the raw materials were going to exceed the weight and balance. So I said, you know what, I'm out. I'm not going to build something that is, overweight by design. And so I sold it as a shell. And I was really upfront with the lady that bought it. I said, look, I had weight and balance issues. It's for sale. Good luck. I had no idea what she did with it. She flew down, put new tires on it. I'd never put tires on it. They were, we don't want to have that conversation. Just beyond that, they were probably old, real old. They were Kumho tires, which I thought was funny because I looked at it and said, oh, it's Kumho. Turns out they're actually a really reputable brand out of Korea, but I thought it was a really funny name for a tire. I'm like, oh, it's a Kumho. Ha ha. Potty humor. Anyway, so, and I think it's probably pronounced Kumo, now that I think about it. But anyway, that's Americans. So I sold that bus, and I decided I was going to buy me a Crown Super Coach. And I really do believe Crown is the best school bus that was ever made in the United States. And they were handcrafted by dedicated people in Los Angeles, and it is the pinnacle of California vehicle manufacturing to this day. I think Teslas are interesting. I don't care for the politics of the company owner, but I still think Crown was a better built vehicle. They were very, very well made. Small production, off-the-shelf Class 8 truck parts, very easy to get it worked on. So I found one for $2,500 in Athens, Tennessee that hadn't moved in 15 years. And I found it on Craigslist, negotiated with the owner, went up and bought it, spent 2 weeks getting it running. New clutch, new input shaft on transmission, had an Eaton 5-speed with a Cummins NH or a Cummins 855 in it, small cam, non-turbo. New water pump that I scrounged off eBay, or not eBay, Amazon. New batteries from Sam's Club. What else did we do? Had the starter rebuilt locally in Athens, Tennessee. It was just great that it was such a common starter that I could just take it off and take it to a rebuilder, not have to buy one, not have to play games with, O'Reilly or AutoZone or China.com. I added 10 gallons of fuel to it, held the decompression lever on the engine and spun it for probably 30, 45 seconds net in 10-second bursts. And got it spinning, let the decompression lever go, and it fired right up. The Cummins engines are just so well made. I've really never had problems with a Cummins engine mechanically. I've always had problems with like fuel pumps for them and shit, but the engines themselves are rock solid. So anyway, the downfall of that bus is a mid-engine bus. The downfall of that bus is Crown's been out of business for a long time, and Maytag, the aircraft industry, and Crown use something called a Gullmite fastener. Sometimes they're called a crown screw. And essentially, it's a round-headed screw with a bunch of serrations on the edges, but the serrations are actually the teeth that you use to drive the screw, and nobody makes the bits anymore. So if you want to buy a bit, you've got to pay ransom to one of these, garage sale flippers in California that, thinks they're holding, a Picasso of tools. So they sell for, $200-300 a bit. It's stupid. So anyway, that sucked. And the only other option you really had was to use a Dremel to grind a slot in each and every single fucking screw that you wanted to remove, at which point you could use a slotted screwdriver or a straight screwdriver to remove that screw. This bus is full of thousands of these damn things. That's really hard on my hands to run a Dremel tool to slot a screw to remove it. And when I got a couple of the walls apart, I realized that, this thing was never designed to be insulated, and the windows dropped into an outside pocket. And it was going to be a nightmare. So I stopped and I let it veg, and I said, fuck this. And I sold it to somebody younger with a lot more energy, and he moved it to a piece of land. And I bought new tires and wheels for it. I converted it from whatever the hell it had as a school bus to modern rims and wheels. Um, it was a good bus. It was really weird. When I went to pressure wash it, all the paint flaked off. So I don't know, like, what the deal is. Like, the paint was adhered to the primer, but the primer was really well adhered to the aluminum, but the color, the yellow, was not adhered to the primer. Like, it all washed off with just a handheld pressure washer. I was like, well, that's weird. So anyway, that bus went away, and I thought, again, I'm cured. I am free of the scourge of owning a bus. And, you know, I told my best friend, look, man, if I ever decide to buy a bus, I want you to come over here and fucking kick my ass around the block. Don't let me buy another bus. I'm over it. I don't want to own one. Yeah, that was a year ago. And about, I don't know, 2 months ago, we were having a conversation, and, oh, hey, I saw a bus for sale. Fuck you. You should buy a bus. No, that's a bad idea. Yeah, that kicked around the back of my head, and again, I don't take a whole lot of encouragement to do crazy. So I started thinking about it, and I think I went into Facebook Marketplace and I saw a Wander Lodge for $2,000, and I went, wow, hey, that's cheap. Yeah. So I'm looking at buying a Wander Lodge. Yeah, that's kind of where the direction goes. I looked at a schoolie, and Wander Lodge is just a better deal. They're foam insulated. They have large tanks for fresh gray and black. It's already plumbed. They almost all have a generator or a compartment. They're wired for the generator. Just all this base stuff, even if the cabinetry is crap, all this base stuff is really valuable and expensive if you have to buy it. So, you know, it's just a good deal. And I think, you know, building a schoolie from scratch is appealing because you can make it a 12-volt first, very, very efficient coach that's functional. Wander Lodges are fluff, a lot of fluff, because they were stupid expensive when they were new. I mean, you know, these things were $100,000, $120,000 in 1979, 1980. That's crazy. That's a lot of money for that time period. Hell, it's a lot of money today. Although, you know, if you go buy a Mercedes Sprinter Class B with a Winnebago cap on it, it's $250,000, and that, you know, again, it might as well be a truck camper. Just stupid shit that they do to those things. Don't get me started on that. Maybe I'll do another video about that and pick one of those apart. You know, and my friend said, well, why don't you buy a Class A or a Class B that's a little newer? I explained to him that, look, the production RVs are not well built. You know, you don't believe me, just Google some accidents involving motorhomes and trailers, and you'll see they basically are like a piñata dropped from 10,000 feet. When they get into an accident, they come apart. And they almost all have water leaks. And once they get wet, all that OSB and particle board and, you know, 2x2 whitewood and staples all just kind of disintegrate with the, you know, laminate panels and all that other shit that they're made out of. They basically fall apart when they get wet on the inside. And they're stupidly expensive. Like, you know, just like, you know, $250,000 for a Sprinter van? Yeah, sucker. So anyway, I don't, that's not an option. So the other problem with the schoolie is the insurance. The insurance companies have just seen a thing or two, and people do stupid shit when they convert them, putting a wood stove in your vehicle. You know, personally, I don't really see the issue with it, but apparently the insurance companies think that's crazy. My bigger issue is all the loose shit inside the vehicle that can come flying forward. But, you know, how is that any different from your Prevost that's full of grandma's china and Labubus and all these other horse shit things that are loose inside there, you hit the brakes, all that shit's coming to the cab with you to say hi. That's a problem. So, yeah, they're not built correctly. And then, you watch people hang tanks off of, threaded rod and, fence boards. Oh yeah, that'll hold up well, because fence boards are real high quality lumber. That's why they're $1.80. Yeah, they're the cheapest ass fast growth lumber they can find, and spritz with some preservative and sell. And if it lasts 5 years, you got a good use out of it. So, at any rate, schoolies are at the eye of the builder, and good God, when people go to sell them, I'm like, you want how much for that? But you can't hardly touch a school bus shelf for $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000. That's just kind of where they start. And pretty much they're all powered with, when you get into the diesel, it's a Cummins 5.9, great engine, but it's really out of its league in a 30,000 pound vehicle. That's not really what that engine was optimized for. A DTE 466, I'm just not convinced that it's not a bad engine, but it's a maintenance hungry engine. Just seems to be a lot of people that have problems with them, and so maybe they just made a whole bunch of them. Maybe some people got unlucky. Just, you're always reading about having to do teardowns and work on them. So, wouldn't say I wouldn't own one. It's just not my first choice. So, that's kind of the rationalization. And what I want is a camper that I can use for weekend camping that can also be base camp for more what I call expedition type trips. So I want to go spend a week in Big Bend, and I want to be comfortable when I do it. I want to go to Guadalupe Mountains National Park and hike up El Capitan, which is the tallest mountain in Texas. I want to be comfortable when I do it. The campground there is a parking lot with stripes, and you've got some, rattlesnake dens. Pad sites nearby. Yeah, no. So I think, 3 to 4 days self-contained with the comforts of home. A warm shower, a comfortable bed, that kind of, by the time you get there in just about anything, you're in, you can't really do that with a motorhome or a truck camper, and it kind of forces you into a motorhome. Because if you do it with a tow vehicle, like, a pickup or something, great. But if you do it with a Jeep, your functional weight on a Jeep Wrangler is 2,000 pounds, maybe. That's your payload. So you just don't have a lot of towing capacity. And if you flip the script, you can drag a Wrangler flat behind a motorhome. So, and that was what I had planned on doing with the Crown, is dragging the Wrangler behind me. The other issue I had with that Crown, by the way, was that it had a manual truck transmission, and I didn't think any of my friends would ever be able to master that. And that meant that if they went somewhere with me, I was the chauffeur. And so I decided that was just not worth the hassle. So, I kind of, through process of elimination, decided, Wander Lodge is essentially a Bluebird All-American that was converted into a motorhome at the factory. So it counts as a Class A motorhome to insurance, and it will always be a Class A motorhome to insurance. So that solves that problem. I ran the numbers on it, and liability insurance, $140 a year. Full coverage is like $350 a year. It's cheap. Now, I don't know what they're going to give you for it. I really don't. depends on who you ask as to what these things are worth. A lot of people think that they're worth stupid money and they're in really not good condition. You know, nobody's paying you $12,000 for an RV that needs $20,000 worth of work done to it. Sorry. So I've looked at a bunch of them. I've looked at pretty much everything online. And I'm headed to Florida to look at one. And my fears with these are that I'm okay with some work. I don't want to build my own RV again. I've been down that road a couple times, got halfway there and went, I'm out. So I went and looked at one in Georgetown. Great tires. Little fire in the back. Okay, great, yeah. So I get there and yeah, it had a fire back by the water heater. Was it an electric blanket? I don't know. Maybe it was the flipping water heater. Something back there caught on fire and burned the hell out of that corner of the bus. And cracked 3 windows in the back. Okay, so that was a pretty hot fire. Smoked the whole effing coach. Okay. Then there was the issue with so that was okay. I went into that knowing that he won $6,000 for it, but bastard had switched the tires with his. Okay, well, don't tell me they're good tires. You put 21-year-old tires on the coach. No, they're shot. Just because they hold air doesn't really mean they're safe to drive around. So, all right. And then the whole time I'm looking at it, he's talking about shit he wants to strip off of it. And I'm like, motherfucker, strip the carcass and then call me and I'll tell you if it has any value to me. Don't tell me what you want to take off the coach while I'm looking at it. It ran well, but there was just more going on there. So looked through the records. It had some kind of transmission problem in the 90s. Okay, not a big deal. Stewart and Stevenson had done it. Apparently they used to practice medical billing. 27 cents for a screw, 5 cents for a washer. It's like, guys, whatever. So at any rate, the other showstopper there was the title. The legal owner had died years ago. I don't even know who it was. In Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then somebody had bought the thing, and then it was sold to the guy who was trying to sell it to me. And I'm like, okay, you're 2 owners removed, and this could be tied up in an estate. You need to get a bonded title. And even then, I don't know if I want to touch it because, again, what's it worth? I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 probably. But, some of these go for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 if they're nice and cleaned up on the inside. So it's not out of the question if I fix it up for somebody to pop up 2 years later and say, hey, that was my grandma's RV and I want my $30,000, and the insurance company is going to pay them. And then I have to pay the insurance company. So, that's just really not a good place to put my time, energy, and money. So I just told, and bonded title is straightforward enough in Texas. The problem is if it's not been titled in Texas, then it requires a law enforcement inspection to make sure you're not, bringing in stolen vehicles that you've scraped the VIN off of. And again, not really a big deal, except that in Harris County, every law enforcement agency plays not it. So, City of Houston, you've got to use Houston Police Department. And it takes 90 days to get a fucking appointment. And if it rains the day of your appointment, they cancel your appointment and you try again sometime later. And they only do them on Mondays. And they just really, the only thing they haven't done is written, we don't give a shit, we don't want to do these, on their website. But it's definitely clear that they don't like doing them and they don't want to do them. There ought to be other ways to handle this. But it's very difficult. It's very tough. So, if I bought it, I got to give him, let's just say we agree on $5,000. I got to give him $5,000, and then 3 to 6 months later, I might get a bonded title. No. Fuck that. So I just said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to argue with you. It's not the bus for me. Good luck. And then there were a couple of buses. There were a couple 31s. There's one that has a bill of sale out of Iowa. I couldn't get an answer from the guy to find out why is it a bill of sale. Iowa's another squirrely place to do, but it was $2,800. And then there was one for $5,000 in Kentucky. I got to it just a little bit too late. It had a broken out window in the door, so I guess they didn't have keys to it. And then it had the two front tires removed, and they'd put the wheels on blocks. So it wasn't sitting on the ground, but it wasn't driving anywhere in that state. So those were out. There's one in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which I think I'm still in Mississippi. Yeah, I'm coming up on Biloxi, so I'm still in Mississippi. Pictures on the outside were okay. He wanted $8,000 for it, which is a little bit on the steep side. You'll hear why in a minute. It's a lot on the steep side. So, probably a 2-foot square patch of paint missing from the street side of the coach. What happens is if the paint's not bonded well, the water gets under it and freezes and just lifts a patch of paint off, and that's what was going on there. A little bit of rust on the edge of the roof. Again, not really a big deal on a 40, 50-year-old coach. But no interior pictures. So I messaged him. I got to text him. All right, well, I don't like texting people because that's the gateway to a scam. But whatever. So I text him, and his answer is to send me the pictures, and basically everything that touched the floor has been removed. All the walls, all the cabinets, all the furniture, it's gone. It's got the driver's seat and a loose captain's seat. Apparently there's a toilet and a shower in there, but he wouldn't send me pictures of those. And I'm like, all right, that's not good. So I don't know what the deal is, but it's gutted. All right, well, I got news for you, Bucky. The market for a shell Wander Lodge is much smaller than the market for a distressed Wander Lodge, and that's smaller than the market for a ready-to-go Wander Lodge. And oh yeah, it needed batteries too, which is kind of a common theme in these. So, and then he just wasn't very responsive. So, here's today's seller tip. If you want to sell a vehicle, you need to disclose the title status. You need to take pictures from the 4 sides and the 4 corners, and you need to take interior pictures so people can see what the fuck they're buying. It'll save you a lot of repetitive questions. Like, is this still available? So, yeah, that one went off the list. So this one that I'm going to look at is 1979. It is a spring suspension coach, which I actually like because air suspension is a bunch of shit that can go wrong and require repairs. These coaches are clearance challenged to begin with. If you lose your airbags, you lose a few inches of clearance. And, let's face it, springs are not going to have an air leak. Not to say you can't damage them, just not as likely. A school bus chassis is designed for a substantial lifetime of service, and as a motorhome, they just don't get it. I mean, 60, 70,000 miles is what I'm seeing on most of these coaches, maybe 120. That's nothing for a commercial bus chassis. Nothing. It's not even broke in. So, anyway, so I'm going to look at a bus. It's got some damage to the door on the generator slide. So, it's in an area that has had storm surge from a couple of hurricanes in the last 5 years, so that's a risk. I asked the guy, hey, do you have clean title? Yes. All right, great. Has it ever flooded? No, high and dry. Okay. you know, I finally asked, I finally did get a phone call from him the other day, and we had a really good conversation. And I asked him, I said, what's the deal with the door damage? And so at one point, I guess he had a business partner, and they were loading this coach onto a trailer, and the tire stuck up above the deck of the trailer, and clearance issues. Apparently it came into contact with it, and he said stop, 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 and the guy went and bent the fuck out of the door. All right. And then I got additional detail. So apparently it still had a issue with clearance, so the guy picked it up with a front end loader from the bumper and bent the trailer hitch. So all right. Well, maybe you can pick up a bus from the bumper, but I got to look back there and see what the fuck's going on. So, I'm going to this thing. Does the engine run? Will it move under its own power? Does it have frame damage? Because if the engine doesn't run, it won't move under its own power, and it has frame damage, I'm out. Has it ever flooded? If it's flooded, I'm out. I just don't want to own a flood bus, because brackish salt water, you will never outrun the maintenance that's going to cause on a vehicle this size with as much complicated bullshit as Wanderlodge fluff these things with. And then it has a turbo that's been added to it, and I was told that it belonged to an attorney who was a real asshole. Imagine that. Now it's a 1979. Wanderlodge didn't offer turbo as a factory option until late 82 and early 83. The engine was the Cat 3208, which is what's in most of these, was really designed as a medium-duty truck engine. So it's well-sized, but it was like a 175 horsepower engine, and they managed to turn it up to about 210 with a tailwind under the right circumstances. So, depending on who you ask, turbo made it a solid 210. They were claiming 225, but it helped the performance in the mountains. And then they were able to turn it up again to 250. And then they added an aftercooler to the turbo, an air-to-air aftercooler, and turned it up to 300. So I have no idea what's on this coach. But what I was told is that the asshole attorney found out they were offering turbos and had it out with Bluebird and had a turbo added. So the turbo was offered in 73, but one of the questions is the block that's on the engine rated for a turbo? Because there were also some people who slapped turbos on non-turbo blocks. And as Cat turned up the performance for these, there were specific things that needed to be modified in the block to assure adequate cooling and lubrication. So, yeah. That would be another reason that I would walk away from this bus. If it does not have a turbo block with a turbo, and it has a turbo on it, then that's going to be a hot mess. There's also some non-standard turbo locations. So depending on where this turbo is, I may or may not be okay with it. Turbo really belongs up at the engine. But there's some remote turbos that have been added. We're going to see. So I may not even get to the point where I put batteries in the bus to start it, because I may look at it and go, yeah, it's got frame damage, or it's got flood damage, or it's got the wrong engine block, and yeah, I'm out of here. So the other thing is, apparently at some point the paint started to fade, and so somebody sanded it and sprayed it with clear coat. Well, that's not really a good idea, because the clear coat will eventually flake off, and yeah, it's been flaking off in big pieces. So it looks like it's got sunburn. Not really the end of the world for me. I will, scuff it and give it a bed liner paint job. That's easy to live with, easy to repair, easy to touch up, and it can be made to look nice. And then, like every Wander Lodge, the ceiling headliner has fallen down. That seems to be a constant theme with these. And yeah, so I've got a bunch of stuff to look at. I'm okay with, you know, carpet needs to be replaced and upholstery needs to be recovered, seats need to be cleaned up. Like, I'm okay with a lot of that. I'm not okay with like major shit like frame damage or you know, other things that are tens of thousands of dollars that are not simple to address. Like, I don't want to put a $13,000 engine in a $5,500 bus frame. So we'll see. You know, there was another bus I looked at in Fort Worth, and I looked at it online. I just don't think the seller's going to negotiate very much. He started at 12, went down to 10. He admits that the generator fell out on a turn at one point. So, like, the slide lock failed. The generator extended hard enough to break the mount and fall all the way out on the ground and rip the wires off. Yeah, so that's the same as it doesn't have a generator installed. It's got one present, but not installed, and it's in unknown condition. And it's a gas generator, so it's Kohler. Yeah, it's probably going to need more than a new air filter and spark plugs. And then there was an issue where carpet's trash, it has air suspension problems in the front, and at some point, dash air was dead. That's really common. And then what was the other thing? Oh, he took out the roof air in the front, so normally that means that died. But, you know, again, we've got a dead generator, so you can't run the roof air without a generator. And then he put in a 12-volt air. Okay. How big's the alternator on this engine? Because you just put in an appliance that requires 80 amps. That's the majority of your alternator capacity if it's running. That might not have been a good idea. I don't know. If it's an inverter, it might throttle down. It might work, but that could be a red flag. And, you know, the only reason I see doing that is that a roof air is $1,000 and a Chinese 12-volt roof air is $500. So, you know, there's no real telling with that coach, but I you know, to me it's a $6,000 or $7,000 coach, not a $10,000 coach, and I just don't think the guy's going to budge that far, so I ain't bothered to talk to him. You know, it is what it is. So one of my YouTube friends runs the channel Perpetual Motion. Check out his stuff. He did a couple of videos on checking out or buying Wander Lodges. Like, he bought one for parts and revived it, and then he had one that he went to look at that was down by me in Texas City, and man, this thing looked like it was straight out of a video game. And it was in a Quonset hut, flat tires, bandits had gotten in and stolen copper out of it. It was just really in shitty condition. Engine wouldn't turn over. No telling what's going on there. So my conclusion, you know, and I don't know what happened with that bus, but the second part of that video, he went from Texas City, Texas, which is south of Houston, about 20 minutes from me, all the way up to Ohio, and looked at some buses that were for sale up there. And there's a guy up there that's got four Wander Lodges. I guess his dad liked to collect cars or something. I don't know the full story on it. But, you know, they have a FC35. It's an 84. It was given a facelift to 87. Apparently, it was real common to send your coach back 3 or 4 years later for updates. And it makes sense. If you paid $120,000 for it, you just aren't really going to care about spending, you know, $10,000, $15,000 on updates. It's just not going to. It's not going to move the needle if you got that kind of money. Um, and I don't think you financed these. I think these were cash purchases back then. So, at any rate, the guy has an FC35 for 15 grand. I don't want air suspension. I'm not opposed to turbo, but I think it's a complexity that you could live without. I don't like the grill on the 87s. It's this real thin line, horizontal thing. It looks like those F-150 grills. I don't like those either. It reminds me of like a commercial air vent in a municipal building. So the other buses, looks like another 35 that he was asking 10 for. It's got some water damage. Not terribly uncommon, but that's a little steep for that, because water damage you're gonna have to remake cabinets. That's a lot of work. And then he had either a 31 or a 33. He's calling it a 32. They never made a 32, so it's either a 31 or 33 that is. He was asking 7 for it, and that's kind of in my sweet spot. And then he had a parts coach. That's not in question either. So I reached out to him. He's kind of my backup. If for some reason this coach that I am going to look at later today turns out to be a giant turd, then I'm headed to Ohio to look at his coaches. And that could turn out to be a dud too, because it's really going to be a question of what's it going to take to make it run. Apparently they were in running condition at one point, not too distant past, but Dad just has gotten too old, and Dad might have passed away. There ain't no telling. They've been for sale for a couple years. He's over it to the point where he has removed the God damn it. Sorry, there's a slow-moving vehicle that's entered the freeway, and I get stuck behind it. It's a big trash truck. Can only do so much with that. You know what? Screw her. You want to tailgate me? You can just sit back there, bitch. So anyway, these people that all want to, it's a fucking interstate. You don't have to be 5 feet from my bumper. You ain't gonna get there any fucking faster. And I'm doing 77, and these people want to get 5 feet from my back bumper. Fuck off. I need to build a rock launcher. That way I can drop gravel at them. Bet they'll back off that. So anyway, a 31 would be a good size, and whatever I buy, I want to defluff it. I want to remove what I refer to as the stupid shit, because these have a lot of stupid shit that Wanderlodge added. So some of the stupid shit is stuff like the you got a water heater in the back corner of the coach, and 5 feet away is your sink, and so they added an instant hot water heater. Why? You have a 100-gallon water tank. How much hot water are you going to use that you can't just, wait a couple seconds for hot water to get there? That's crazy. Because instant hot water heaters that requires a lot of electricity. They put 3 Suburban propane furnaces in, about 32,000 BTU apiece. And then they added 1,500 watt electric heaters next to them. Gee whiz, that's a lot of power. 3 roof airs on a foam insulated coach. Wow. Ice maker, trash compactor were options. They had a safe that could be added to the vehicle. Just crazy shit. So, it's just interesting. Interesting. The so, a lot of this stuff just counts as fluff. You don't need it. It's thoroughly unnecessary in terms of having an RV. So I'm gonna remove a bunch of that crap. I really think that you need to be 12 volt first, and that means that you need to have air conditioners that can be run on an inverter. So they have to be inverter air conditioners to begin with, maybe 12 volt. And then you've got to use things like a Webasto for your hot water instead of 120 or 230 volt. And you've got to use ditch the electric heat altogether. You run over an electric heat, get you a little ceramic heater you can plug in if you're in a campground for some reason you want to do that. So that's ways that I think you can defluff one of these. So anyway, this is a really long chitty chat video. Some of y'all will find this boring. I don't know how many of y'all are actually watch the whole thing. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it interesting.